Did you know that Astarion was initially planned to be a tiefling? Did you know about the War Room? Well, me either. In today's video, I'm going to go over an IGN interview with Sven Vinka, where Sven lets us into the minds of Larian Studios during Baldur's Gate 3's development. This is a fun one, chapter markers below. Let's start off with Astarion, as Astarion was initially planned to be a tiefling. In the picture that you're looking at right now, this was one of the early versions of tiefling Astarion. Now, one of the reasons for Astarion initially being a tiefling companion was that Larian was shooting for more diversity among the companions' races. And since we're on this topic, this is actually one of my biggest criticisms of the companions as a whole, but not necessarily a criticism as much because I do love the companions. I guess I would say that to me, this was a missed opportunity here. And my God, people, please, this is not a topic about gender diversity or human skin color diversity, etc. We're simply talking about cool fantasy races and how they can add some really interesting dynamics and backstories to fantasy games. So in BG3, we have a total of 10 companions right now. 3 of them are humans, 5 of them are elves. And of course, there are sub-races for the elves, and Shadowheart and Jaheira are half-elves, but whoop-de-doo. And that only leaves 2 other companions, which is a tiefling, Karlach, and the Githyanki Lae'zel. Astarion being a tiefling would not have added that much diversity to this fantasy racial lineup because Karlach is of course already a tiefling, but perhaps Karlach was not developed yet, or Larian was initially planning on laying off a bit on the elves. I actually think that not having a dwarven companion in BG3 is a huge sin, as in many fantasy games, dwarves can really add a cool, fun dynamic to a party. Or imagine a dragonborn that comes bustling out of the woods when you're in the forest area where you can find Scratch, and it's a dragonborn hunter with a bear companion, and the dragonborn has this deep, elaborate story of the nation that they came from in a previous world where his family is from. Or even a half-orc companion who was raised with an orc tribe but treated really poorly, and ultimately he escaped. I think this was a missed opportunity here. What do you guys think about this? But yeah, back to Astarion. Astarion was a tiefling vampire, which does sound pretty cool, but Sven said that Larian didn't feel like this character was resonating well enough, and they ended up making some changes. And a big part of Astarion's character is being seductive, and our poor tiefling buddy right here just wasn't getting the job done. And Larian came up with the High Elf Astarion, which hit the buzzer for everyone, and clearly that worked out well. In further expanding on the topic of companions, Sven told IGN that there's an entire roster of companions that didn't make the cut. There were way more than the ones we know, and that all evolved up to a certain point in their life cycle until we said, I'm sorry, you're going to companion heaven now. That's a very normal process for studios to go through as they're creating a game. They create a bunch of companions, and some of them make the cut, other ones don't. But damn, it would be really cool if we could see what that full roster is. But actually, Sven did reveal one of these potential companions to us, KETHERIC Thorm, and beware of Act 2 spoilers. Yeah, you could convince him. So if you play the game and there's a moment where you can convince him and you see that moment where he breaks, that moment led to recruitment normally. We cut that out when we rescoped. It was part of the fixing of Act 2 when we were stuck on it. That was what happened in the rescoping. He was supposed to be in your camp while you were dealing with Gortash and with Orin, so he became a source of information on them, and he could trust. You could get him to his arc. You could then be convinced by him to go to this side, so it was a great story. But yeah, a little bit hard to understand that quote with the words that were used, but yeah, KETHERIC Thorm was going to be a companion in this game. Who would have ever thought? And I don't know about you guys, but when I finished Act 2, and I noticed that KETHERIC's arc was pretty much done, it was done, I was surprised. I'm sure there's good reasons why Larian didn't go through with this, and reasons that us regular consumers just will never be able to understand. But I actually really find myself wishing that Larian was able to go through with their initial idea here, because I did feel a little bit let down when I learned that you can't actually join KETHERIC. It genuinely surprised me in this game that has such great player agency. And also, KETHERIC's story arc was just really good, especially when compared to, I would say, the more shallow arcs of Gortash and Orin. And KETHERIC not making it into Act 3, I'd say, took away a bit from the potential of the story. Moving on to some more content that was initially planned that didn't make it. And I'm hesitant here to say cut content because unfortunately half of the internet doesn't seem to understand what that actually means and how normal it is for content to be cut in a game's development phase. The term cut content at the moment seems to only be used with a negative connotation, so it's hard to have even a conversation around it, even if there are a few things that we could talk about that players feel like should have been in the game. But initially, Larian had plans for us players to visit some really cool, interesting places And one of these places was actually, believe it or not, Candlekeep, the great library fortress of the Sword Coast. And Candlekeep is where you start off in BioWare's 1998 Baldur's Gate 1. This would have been so cool to explore Candlekeep in a 2023 video game, but it did make the cut. We were also initially going to be able to have an entire visit to Hell. We didn't really get any specifics on that. We do already get to go to the 9 Hells in the game's tutorial, and also Raphael's House of Hope, but it seems like Larian was planning a much bigger visit for players. And perhaps even cooler, visiting Vlaakith's palace was initially an idea, and Vlaakith is the Lich ruler of the Githyanki, and this would have brought us players to Tunarath, which is a Githyanki city in the astral plane that was built upon the body of a long-dead six-armed deity. All of those are really, really cool ideas that were on the planning board initially, but they didn't end up making the cut. Sven also talked about a place called the War College. In Act 3 spoilers, beware. The War College was going to be a place where you would see Will's dad, Alder Ravengard. And this War College would act as a place where players would help stop the Absolute's army from marching on Baldur's Gate, effectively buying them some more time to figure out what's going on in the city. I believe that this place was going to be a place that you visited in between Act 2 and the start of Act 3, and its physical location would have been somewhere in between Moonrise Towers and also the city of Baldur's Gate, so likely a place that you would visit right after taking care of KETHERIC Thorm's arc. So the War College had this huge chessboard on which they were strategizing, and so there was an entire scene with a dragon on top of the War College. We actually made that. So there was a dragon which was hopping from tower to tower and tower, but the problem was that it was very large to be able to deal with the dragon, and so we had to fill a lot of real estate with situations. As many of you are of course aware, Larian likes to have really content-dense areas where the player has the opportunity to explore and interact with so many things within one area, and all of this ties into the spiderweb of permutations and cinematics, etc. And this War College was just going to add far too much complexity to the scripting of the game and things like that, so they decided not to do it. I think a better way to phrase this is content that didn't make the cut rather than saying that it's cut content. And the last topic of this interview that I wanted to discuss, and Sven does actually get into his thoughts on the industry and everything that's been going on in this same interview, but I'll save that for another video if it seems like it's content that you guys would like, is Larian's N+1 design philosophy. And N+1 refers to the base level of resources required for a system's functionality plus a single backup. It's a form of resilience that ensures system availability in the event of component failure. But let's not get into technical terms here, and I don't really fully understand it myself, but what this basically means for Baldur's Gate 3's design is that it was built from the ground up to ensure that the game always works regardless of what you do. And this is why you can feel so much freedom in Baldur's Gate 3 in your actions and your dialogue choices, or perhaps your choice to kill NPCs and just see what happens after that. Baldur's Gate 3 is designed to allow players to kill NPCs without the game breaking. Those players may miss out on content, of course, but the game still pushes on and the player will still be able to obtain the critical information for the story. Their playthrough isn't over. Unless, well, I guess there's a couple situations where it is over, and that involves a bomb in Cal's chest. Baldur's Gate 3 and also, of course, the original Sin games were designed around this N+1, albeit Baldur's Gate 3 is much more improved and advanced when compared to the original Sin games. And one example of this, aside from a player just killing NPCs and the game still being able to work, is Shadowheart and the Githyanki artifact that she has on her possession. Sven says that there are 24 or possibly more ways that Shadow can give you, the player, this artifact. So if a player kills Shadowheart, you'll still get the artifact. If you work with Shadowheart and have her as one of your main companions, you'll still get the artifact. If you ignore Shadowheart completely, there will still be a logical in-game way that the artifact will make its way to you, the player. Shadowheart's fate, on the other hand, may differ from player to player, but the artifact will always make its way to the player, and this is important because it's of prime importance to the actual main story, and without the artifact, the game's story pretty much breaks. This N+1 design, when used by competent studios, can create a game that offers an incredible amount of player agency. And I'd certainly expect Larian to be doing the same for their next project. And that's going to be it for this video. I thought I'd just share some of those ideas that Larian had. It's cool to see how far Baldur's Gate has come, and also certain ideas that evolved or were scrapped and things of that nature. Now, I know Baldur's Gate 3 is basically done, aside from a future patch that's going to be bringing us some, new evil endings, but like actual full-on content coming to the game isn't going to be happening, and there's no Baldur's Gate 4 out of Larian, no DLCs coming to Baldur's Gate 3, but I will continue to update you guys on all the future patches and any news really related to Larian Studios in general. And now that we know Larian is working on their next game, they actually have an idea for 2 games, but they're working on at least one of those 2 games right now, and that they're going to be doing an early access period. I think there's going to be a lot of potential for content for myself and also content for you guys to view over the next coming years with this next project. I'm very excited for it, and I plan on just doing exactly what I did for Baldur's Gate 3, covering all the information. If they do Panel from Hells, I'll be co-streaming them and watching them, and yeah, I'm excited for the future. Catch you all in the next one.